friends. It's been a while. Welcome back to Walking the Talk, the sermon podcast of Creekside Community Church in San Leandro, California, where we help you to walk out what we talked about on Sunday. In this case, many Sundays ago. My name is Jeff Bruce. I'm one of the pastors here, joined by Max Butler, John Bruce, the usual cast and crew. Gentlemen, how are we?
I'm just wondering who you're calling old. You said old friends, you know?
Old friends, like longtime friends. Not that they're
Oh, yeah, I see.
objectively old, yeah.
Yeah, some of us are old.
You look like you were feverishly reading your Bible.
I was just remembering what's happened to this.
Oh. Well, gentlemen, how's the
been a
summer going for each of us?
Busy. Busy summer.
Busy
Good.
summer.
Yeah, it's been good.
What's keeping you so busy? Just meetings?
Family
Oh, that's right. You got family.
and just responsibilities.
Yeah.
Different things going on.
Yeah.
It's been good. I'd rather be busy than not.
Yeah. I, for one, have a family, but I'm not that responsible. So I've been on vacation. It's been great. So
Great.
great, until the U.S. soccer team remembered that they were the U.S. men's soccer team and decided to
Yeah.
fold,
Step out of the box.
step
See
out of
what
the
happens.
box.
They became who they are.
Yeah. In the words of Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
Oh, so do you still have a dog in the fight, or are you guys just like checking out?
Well, the top four teams in the world
Are the
going
dog-
in
yeah.
are the top four team are the four remaining teams, and so I think that the real World Cup is today. France versus Spain. Whoever wins that game will end up winning the World Cup.
You think? Okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. That's your call.
Lock it here. You heard it here. I think Spain is the only team that can beat France, and yeah, but I don't. It's a toss up who will win today. What do you think, Dad? What's your hot take?
I don't know. The team I pick always loses. So
So
my hot take is England.
Okay. Oh, oh.
cheerio.
Much to the dismay.
Because they beat my other hot take, Norway.
Yeah. I felt like Norway and Morocco were really the dark horses in this tournament.
No, they
so-
were fun. They're just fun teams.
Yeah, they were fun.
Or Norway was a fun team anyway.
Yeah.
And they came home to a hero's welcome because that was the first time they'd ever gotten that far. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if the U.S. would have gotten that far, they would have had a hero's welcome here too.
You know who does not have a hero's welcome, though? David.
Yes.
And he's such a great hero.
And he's such a hero. But,
Smooth transition there, Jeff.
well, we had to start talking about the Bible at some point.
Yes.
So, looking at 1 Samuel 21 and 22, this passage begins David's time in the wilderness, fleeing from Saul. Then David came to Nob to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said to him, "Why are you alone and no one with you?" And David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The king has charged me with a matter and said to me, 'Let no one know anything of the matter about which I send you and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever is here.' And the priest answered David, 'I have no common bread on hand, but there is holy bread if the young men have kept themselves from women.' And David answered the priest, 'Truly women have been kept from us, as always when I go on an expedition. The vessels of the young men are holy, even when it is an ordinary journey. How much more today will their vessels be holy?' So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there but the bread of the presence, which is removed from before the Lord, to be replaced by hot bread on the day it is taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's herdsmen. Then David said to Ahimelech, 'Then have you not here a spear or a sword at hand? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste.' And the priest said, 'The sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you struck down in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take that, take it, for there is none but that here.' And David said, 'There is none like that. Give it to me.' And David rose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, 'Is not this David, the king of the land? Did they not sing to one another of him in dances? Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s.' And David took these words to heart and was much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them and pretended to be insane in their hands and made marks on the doors of the gate and let his spittle run down his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, "Behold, you see the man is mad. Why then have you brought him to me? Do I lack madmen that you have brought this fellow to behave as a madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?" David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him, and he became commander over them. And there were with him about 400 men. And David went from there to Mizpah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and my mother stay with you till I know what the Lord will do for me." And he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. Then the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not remain in the stronghold. Depart and go into the land of Judah." So David departed and went into the forest of Hereth. Now Saul heard that David was discovered and the men who were with him. Saul was sitting at Gibeah under the tamarisk tree on the height with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing about him. And Saul said to his servants who stood about him, "Hear now, people of Benjamin. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, that all of you have conspired against me? No one discloses to me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is sorry for me and discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait, as at this day." Then answered Doeg, the Edomite, who stood by the servants of Saul, "I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house. The priests who were with Nob, and all of them came to the king. And Saul said, "Hear now, son of Ahitub." And he answered, "Here I am, my lord." And Saul said to him, "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, and that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, so that he has risen against me to lie in wait, as at this day?" Then Ahimelech answered the king, "And who among all your servants is so faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law and captain over your bodyguard and honored in your house? Is today the first time that I have inquired of God for him? No. Let not the king impute anything to his servant or to all the house of my father, for your servant has known nothing of all this, much or little." And the king said, "You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house." And the king said to the guard who stood about him, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand also was with David." And they knew that he fled and did not disclose it to me. But the servants of the king would not put out their hand to strike the priests of the Lord. Then the king said to Doeg, "You turn and strike the priests." And Doeg of the Edomite turned and struck down the priests, and he killed on that day 85 persons who wore the linen ephod. And Nob, the city of the priests, he put to the sword, both man and woman, child and infant, ox, donkey, and sheep he put to the sword. But one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. And David said to Abiathar, "I knew on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, 'I have occasioned the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me, do not be afraid, for he who seeks my life seeks your life. With me, you shall be in safe keeping.'" It certainly looks like David is on this meteoric rise to take the throne. And then, for the last third of the book, there's this sharp turn where David is now fleeing for his life from Saul. And this period goes on for years. And so I just find that interesting.
Yeah, I thought your take on it in the sermon was really good about just the idea of waiting, that God uses waiting in us to accomplish things that nothing else will accomplish.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of that, the seasons of waiting that God puts us through, which begins right here in this scene in chapter 21.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see this development in David. Right now, he's thinking about David.
Yeah.
And you see that in the way that he talks to Ahimelech and his behavior at Gath. Clearly, the Bible is not, it's describing what happened.
Yeah.
It's
not commending it.
Not commending it.
Yeah.
I think in this case. But yeah, you really see David at the beginning of this passage, he's thinking about David. By the end of it, he seems to have this growing realization, this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
Right? Because he realizes that his deception at Nob or his self-preserving, his self-preservation mindset contributed to what ultimately happened to the city, which is this horrific tragedy.
Yeah, yeah. You mean the end of chapter 22?
22, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I like the realistic view of David. I mean, it's just that character doesn't just appear. It has to be developed. And he's got some stuff he needs to learn throughout this passage, which is really significant. And I like the idea that he is pretty selfish in terms of how he deals with Ahimelech. And Ahimelech's just, he's believing the best. He's just going along, just doing the right thing. And yet he dies, and all of his family dies as a result of David.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson to learn that, doing the right thing doesn't always give you the result that you want or the best outcome or what you would think is the best outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems that there's this mutual distrust.
Yeah, you pointed that out. I thought that was good.
Where Ahimelech, he's scared because he has a sense that David is not, he's on the outs with Saul, or that something is wrong, that he would be coming like this. And you figure David has just fled from the presence of Saul, or fled from the field right after getting this intelligence report from Jonathan that Saul is really going to kill you. And so he has a sense right away something is wrong here. Mm-hmm. And yet he doesn't think that he can go against David.
Yeah.
And David doesn't know if he can trust Ahimelech. In fact, David has no idea who he can trust at this point, besides his closest followers.
It's interesting how through this whole story there seems to be a lot of knowledge of what the goings on, the reputations precede everyone, and people have this intuition, and particularly the fact that God has been using David so much. So I think Ahimelech, regardless of what he might think, he still has an instinct to think that David is God's chosen, because of the behavior that he's displayed.
Yeah, and when Jesus quotes from this passage, that seems to be his understanding as well, that Ahimelech had some realization that David was God's anointed, but also that he was in a desperate situation, and therefore he was willing to fulfill a higher law, which was helping to preserve life, than the ritual law of reserving the bread for the priests.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm starting to figure out, were there really any young men that he was meeting there, or is this just all a story? Because it doesn't seem like he meets any young men for a while as he begins to get more and more followers and stuff. But here he's pretty much alone with Ahimelech, and he's alone as he goes down to Achish in Gath,
right?
Which is a funny story. And I love that line: "Do I lack madmen?"
Yeah. It's brilliant.
So funny.
What every mayor feels, right?
Well, it's reminiscent of that thing that the Hebrews say when they're in the wilderness. It's like, "Did you bring us all the way out here to kill us?"
Right.
It's like, there's just like...
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
No, and, it's funny. I was... the insanity plea rarely works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost because it's really hard to act consistently crazy, right? People, there's all of these tells. And so... when you look at what David writes about this incident in the Psalms, it's clear. He's like, the Lord delivered me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in a bad spot here. And, I brought Goliath's sword back to Goliath's town, and I'm walking in. And I mean, oh my, it's so,
Only a crazy man would do that.
That guy's crazy.
Right.
Now, I have a suspicion that Achish kind of has a soft spot in his heart for David.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows up later, and, it's like, I just think that he, even though he's potentially a deadly threat, I think he admires him, and there's something about, because why wouldn't he not just kill him?
He pulled it off, right? I mean, apparently it's an amazing thing, but there is this theme too, where it's sort of like, you see this throughout the Old Testament, the Gentiles kind of get what's going on in a way that the Jews don't, right?
Yeah.
In the Jonah story, even with the Ark, the Philistines are like, hey, this thing is really messing us up. We should do something to honor this God and give him, right? And I think there's a similar thing here where they go, oh, David is the king of the land. And it's like, no, he's not. And yet they realize he's the one that's out fighting the Lord's battles.
Yeah.
And, I'm curious to know from you guys, why do you think God makes us wait? Right? Because he doesn't give David the throne immediately. He doesn't send a heart attack so that Saul keels over and dies, right? I mean, he makes David go through quite a bit of wilderness wandering here.
Well, I mean, to me, the obvious, David isn't ready to be king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And God's not going to put him in a situation he's not really prepared to walk in. And all the mistakes he makes in these outlaw years shows that
Right.
it would have been disastrous for a king to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the character needs to be developed. So it's interesting. When I came, my history here, there was an opportunity, or there was a need for a leader earlier on when I was still just a volunteer in this community. When their first worship director left, and I was thinking somewhere in the back of my mind, well, I'm the guy, pick me.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. And I didn't like take my ball and go home, but I ended up going to a different, working at a different church for a while. But
Took your ball to a different church.
I took my ball. Those were my wilderness years. No, but I think I learned in that I learned very quickly that I wasn't ready. I just knew that I had skill. I had competency and I had all of that stuff, but God doesn't really want competency from us. He wants character.
Yeah.
And I didn't have character and calling because I did not, I just saw an opportunity, but it wasn't confirmed, and it wasn't, thank you for sending me. I mean, I learned a lot, and I certainly learned, and I certainly felt called after a while.
Yeah.
And it was cool. I mean, so I'm thankful for it now. But obviously, in the moment, I wasn't even really upset. But it's just like I just knew it wasn't the time for this thing to happen.
Yeah. One of the points you made there, I think, is so good that I think our natural inclination is to view calling as what do I get to do or what can I do? And what God wants to mature in us is a sense of calling that says, who am I called to serve?
Yeah.
So that my calling is actually about other people more than it's about me. Mm-hmm. And you see that in David, that David has had just unbroken success in a way.
Yeah.
And that guy's really dangerous if he goes from unbroken success to a position of leadership, because he hasn't been tested.
Yeah.
He hasn't dealt with disappointment and pain and heartache and all those things, which reveal who you really are and beat the selfishness out of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons God makes us wait, is we realize, gosh, I can't manufacture success. I can't make this happen. I really need to trust in the Lord.
But the great thing is, I'm piggybacking what you're saying, is look at all the people that were drawn to David.
Yes.
The disaffected, the ones who have been, they were in debt, they were abused by Saul.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so those are the people that he was called to. And, of course he was too. I mean, he was unjustly treated, and it's a lesson he had to learn.
And you see the progression even by the end of the chapter, that he moves from thinking about himself to, I knew Doeg was a bad actor in this situation, and that I was putting other people's lives at risk by being here. To think like a king is to think about the people under you, even before you're in that position. And I think David is learning that. You really see that in chapter 23, where you really get a great window into David, the best of David, which is him thinking about being the shepherd of Israel and tending for the weak and afflicted. And that's David at his very best. Yeah. So, no, it's good. Other thoughts on waiting? What waiting reveals?
Well, it's the only way to trust God.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Right.
If my schedule is always the one that's on, I have to wonder, well, is God involved in this at all? Or, it just... am I leading this thing, or is God leading this thing?
Yeah.
So it's just a great wake-up call.
Yeah, and I think for listeners, if you're in a season of waiting where you feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to end up, a couple thoughts. One, you have to keep moving. You can't be stuck. Yeah. You have to keep being faithful where you are.
Yeah.
But two, you have to ask, what is being exposed about my character that when I am in that next season will become a real liability to me.
Yeah.
Because it's the things that the tendency toward anger, deception, self-preservation in David. You put a king in that position. Now it's a force multiplier of just, you can wreck a nation with these character qualities.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
No comment.
And it's interesting. Saul didn't go through that preparation time
No.
because he was the king. He was the people's choice.
He was the people's choice.
not God's choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he never got the discipline and the training.
No, you get a sense that Samuel was deeply invested in Saul.
Yeah.
Especially in the early years, and kind of Saul became like an adoptive son to him. But Saul is just a tragic story.
Yeah.
For that reason. So, but what that's saying is, if God hasn't given me what I want yet, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you needed.
It's exactly what you needed, because had he given it to you at that point, you weren't ready to steward it well, and it would have been a harm to the people around you as well.
Yeah.
So better to make mistakes in a contained environment than to make them in a position of great power and authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And yet there are real consequences. I mean, I think that the pain and the anguish that David felt about the loss of life really set his, it set his trajectory to kind of be more thoughtful about those things.
Yeah. And that's what we see in chapter 23, where David is really starting to follow God's lead. Now they told David, "Behold, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are robbing the threshing floors." Therefore David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" And the Lord said to David, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" Then David inquired of the Lord again, and the Lord answered him, "Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will give the Philistines into your hand." And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought away their livestock and struck them with a great blow. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. When Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, had fled to David to Keilah, he had come down with an ephod in his hand. Now it was told Saul that David had come to Keilah, and Saul said, "God has given him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars." And Saul summoned all the people to war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. David knew that Saul was plotting harm against him, and he said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring the ephod here." Then David said, "O Lord, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. Will the men of Keilah surrender me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord, the God of Israel, please tell your servant." And the Lord said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the men of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul?" And the Lord said, "They will surrender you." Then David and his men, who were about 600, rose and departed from Keilah, and they went wherever they could go. When Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, he gave up the expedition, and David remained in the strongholds in the wilderness and the hill country of the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him every day, but God did not give him into his hand. David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life. David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh, and Jonathan, Saul's son, rose and went to David at Horesh and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul my father also knows this." And the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. Then the Ziphites went up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is not David hiding among us in the strongholds of Horesh, on the hill of Hakilah, which is south of Jeshimon? Now come down, O king, according to all your heart's desire to come down, and our part shall be to surrender him into the king's hand." And Saul said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, for you have had compassion on me. Go, make yet more sure. Know and see the place where his foot is, and who has seen him there, for it is told me that he is very cunning. See therefore, and take note of all the lurking places where he hides, and come back to me with sure information. Then I will go with you, and if he is in the land, I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah." And they arose and went to Ziph ahead of Saul. Now David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the Arabah to the south of Jeshimon, and Saul and his men went to seek him. And David was told, so he went down to the rock and lived in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued after David in the wilderness of Maon. Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. and David was hurrying to get away from Saul. As Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them, a messenger came to Saul saying, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid against the land." So Saul returned from pursuing after David and went against the Philistines. Therefore that place was called the Rock of Escape. And David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-Gedi. I think it's a great passage on what it looks like to follow God and to hear from God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's this contrast between David and Saul, where David is continually inquiring of the Lord for guidance. And Saul just assumes he has God's blessing and guidance. He's just doing what Saul wants and assumes God's approving at it, where David is really step by step asking God, What do you want me to do?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this is the first time in this whole story that David has waited on the Lord. Mm-hmm. So he's obviously learning. He's realized from chapter 22 just how deadly his wrong choices can turn out for a lot of people. So he asks God and depends on God. It's interesting that Saul doesn't even concern himself about the Philistines coming to Keilah until he finds out that David is there.
Right.
Oh, I can get David now. So, great.
Two for the price of one.
Yeah.
Just,
Bundle your savings.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's, oh man, the narrative artistry is so great because the passage begins with the Philistines raiding.
Yeah.
It ends with it. Why are the Philistines raiding Israel to begin with? Because Saul is spending all of his time with thousands of men chasing David around the wilderness and not doing the one thing God actually told him to do back in chapters 8 and 9, which is protect Israel from the Philistines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So interesting.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that David is a model here of someone who asks God for help, someone who's willing to listen to God's counsel and correct course, and also someone who really is trusting God to protect him.
Yeah.
And sees where God wants to take him.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. No, I mean, he's fleeing, but I don't think he's panicking. I mean, I think he's really depending on God. Even at this point where, Saul almost has caught him.
Yeah.
And then the Philistines show up again, darn Philistines.
Yeah.
I got to go chase them now. And so David escapes.
And you see God's providence in it again, where there's this hidden hand of God that he can move foreign armies, he can move nations, he can do all of these things to protect David and keep him on the path. And Jonathan really gets that too. And I think every time David remembers that, he stays close to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he forgets it, he relies on his own his own cunning, his deceitfulness to protect himself. Yeah. And then he makes the situation worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the dynamic throughout the whole story. I mean, it keeps on it ebbs and it flows. I mean, there's moments of greatness, or there's moments of good examples, and then it just goes back to that again and again. Yeah.
So what principles do you guys see here about following God's lead?
Well, I think the first one is just that we're safest when we're most dependent on God. And you have to have that conviction. Yeah. Because he's not going to be safe. David's not going to be safe for quite a while here. But that's the issue. Do I make my priority seeking God and depending on God regardless of my circumstances? That's the safest I can be. And, whether it's financial challenges or health challenges or any of these other things we deal with, it's anything that forces me to depend on God is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it makes me safer.
Yeah.
So that would be one lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also made the point of how do you deal with the answer that you don't want to hear from God?
Right.
When God says one thing and you feel something pulling against you, usually in a desire that you have, and it's like, will you actually cede to that answer and rest in it and then trust that God is really good?
Right.
And
Yeah, God leads clearly. He just doesn't lead in the direction we would necessarily choose.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you see with David is his operating assumption in chapter 21 is, well, I need to protect myself. And so anything that confirms that, I will follow that.
Yeah.
And now by 23, he's asking, should we go attack the Philistines? Because no one else is coming to save this village. I mean, that is not something that a man on the run would ask unless you're really depending on God for your guidance. And I think often, if Christians feel frustrated, why don't I sense God's leading more? Like, well, how willing would you be to let God interrupt your plan, your schedule to do something that you wouldn't normally want to do? Because there's a Creeksider, she had a great comment about this, but one way to discern the voice of God is something that my intuition or feelings wouldn't have come up with that I feel called to do. That's something to start following more because this is a sign that I don't think that I just came up with this. This might be the Spirit of God impressing something on my heart that is unique. That's not just the way I would normally think about things.
Yeah. It reminds me of the picture that Peter uses in 1 Peter of trials being like the smelting of gold and purifying of gold. And so when you melt gold, apparently, you skim off the impurities off the top to make it more pure. And that's the point of trials, that these impurities in us only become evident in the trial.
Yeah.
Wrong attitudes, wrong things we've been trusting in, wrong motives, all these different things. And so basically, David is in kind of the smelting right now of having these things scraped off of him by God as they become more and more obvious. But if I hang on to those things, I've got to have this, I want this, then this can be a much more difficult process.
Yeah, and I think you miss where the Lord was trying to lead you in different areas of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stood out to me here is I think a lot of Christians want to know, how does God lead me? And how does God speak to me to lead me? And I'd say a couple things. Well, the Bible is the way, right? If you want to know what God thinks, open it. If you want to hear him speak audibly, read it out loud, right? That's the John Piper quote, right? Yeah. But then my mentor, one of my mentors, Ken Burdick, he wrote a great blog post about this, but he said, essentially, he noted 17 levels of, I don't know if he uses the word clarity, but obviousness in the way God speaks in the Bible. And just that sometimes he speaks to a group on Mount Sinai. This is kind of this is the most obvious way. All the way down to talking about the Lord put it on the person's heart, or the Lord, you know what I mean? Or a sense of assurance, or it seemed good to us in the Holy Spirit. And so there's different levels of God making it absolutely clear to just, this seems to be the way to go. And I think what that tells me is hearing God's voice is something I can grow in. That as I'm in the Word, as I'm responsive and receptive and prayerful, I can actually become more attuned to the Spirit's direction in my life.
Yeah.
Conversely, I can turn it down.
Yeah.
And not be as attuned to where He's trying to guide me.
Yeah. That's good.
It's the music principle works here in that you intuitively begin to learn the form of songs by spending time, by just studying a lot of forms and listening to a lot of, and having some structure and some theory behind it, where you say, okay, well, this is this type of chord, and I can tell the difference between a major and a minor chord. I mean, if you spend time in the Word, the themes over and over again become apparent. You understand God that much better, as well as we can possibly understand Him. I mean, you hear the themes, you see it over and over again, and then you build up an intuition about it, and yet you still are dependent on it, because it's prayer is involved in that, because it's not just knowledge. It's something about prayer and seeking and asking and waiting.
And it takes practice. Discernment is a practice, right, in your day-to-day life. I think of, that's what Hebrews 5 says, that it's through constant practice discerning good from evil, and that's wisdom is you just practice in decision making. Okay, what are God, what should I be paying attention to here? And okay, it's that thing. And then you learn through your mistakes. Oh, you know what? That's something I really should have been paying attention. That was a red flag that now that I know the scriptures a little better, I know to look for that red flag in a way I didn't before.
Yeah. And I think too, it's the difference between good and evil, not the difference between two equally good thoughts. Mm-hmm. That's what gives you your discernment as you realize, for me to do this would actually be an evil thing, an evil way to handle this. I wouldn't even recognize this.
Or a selfish way of handling it,
or whatever it is. It is really a reduction in God's righteousness of what God would approve of. So the more sensitive you become to good and evil, to righteousness and unrighteousness, the easier it is to see what God would have you to do in a variety of situations.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, pat answers are not great solutions. Things are morally complex, and yet it's worth it to acknowledge, though, that the tendency to make things fuzzy in our culture is the thing that makes it harder to hear God's voice. Because if you think about relativity and and the way that people tend to make things seem less clear, then you'll listen to that and you'll say, oh, well, you can just never know anything, and I'm never gonna,
Oh, it's the on podcasts, they'll have all of these discussions about the best way to do something, and then they invariably they come back to, but you just got to find out what works for you.
Yeah,
and it's sort of there's this. It's like that's the sacred voice is just if it squares with your intuition or your gut, and you've really got to war against that as a Christian to say what squares with my intuition and my gut often misleads me.
Yeah.
And actually drowns out God's voice and what He's trying to teach me in a moment.
You become your own God.
Absolutely. That's your North Star.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you got a perfect intuition and gut, then do that.
Why are you listening to podcasts?
Yeah.
He who trusted his own mind is a fool.
Exactly.
As the proverb says.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jeff.
It's good stuff. We'll be catching up over the next few weeks, hopefully. And thanks, listeners, for your patience. We're
just teaching you to wait.
It was waiting to be said right there. Won't wait to end the podcast, though. So see you later.